The greatest game ever played, and one of the greatest movies, in my opinion. And, I don't know if you're a golf fan, but you don't have to be a golf fan really to like that movie. But Francis, we met, was a young man who had the opportunity, actually just happened to live in the town where the U.S. Open was going to be played in 1913. And for me, it was as I was watching the movie, I loved the movie because I like golf too. And watching that unwind, the story is greater than just a golf movie. In fact, about it, every time I watch it, you know what happens every time I watch it? You all know me a little bit. You know what happens? What happens? At the very end of the movie, and I'm not going to spoil that for you just yet, but at the end of the movie, I always just cry because it's like, are you kidding me? And this movie is full of great truths, and as I was debating on what I wanted to end at the movies with, and knowing that it was going to be the 13th anniversary for our church, this seemed very fitting, and you'll see why in just a few minutes. But I'm just going to give you just a touch. That clip did a really good part in kind of showing you a little bit about the movie. But Francis is a son of a coal mine worker, and so the father thinks that he has to just kind of conform to what he does. In other words, he's like, well, look, it's a gentleman's game. And, you're not a gentleman. Now, we found out in that movie, he's much more of a gentleman than the so-called gentleman. And so he's got a gift. He's got a talent. And he's one of the best golfers, and he's never had any training. He's never had any opportunities. He's a caddy. They don't even let caddies play on the golf course. But there was some people that saw him, that saw the gift that he had. And so they said they wanted to watch him play. And so he plays around, and he played a great round. And then they invited him to the U.S. Open. But he had made a deal with his dad. And his dad had kind of forced his hand about getting out of the game of golf, because after all, he had to go work and create his own life within the confines of what his dad thought he should do. And so he goes out, and they ask him to play in the Open. He plays. And all through the movie, from this point on, it just gets tremendous. He starts, he wakes up at night. You saw one of those clips. He's in his room, and he's trying to do this. I have no idea, by the way, how they played golf dressed like this. Jeremy, you know what I'm talking about? I mean, we're like in shorts, T-shirts, or, a golf short or something like that. A lot less. Look at this thing. You try to swing this thing, and there's my golf glove, too. I'm just trying to give you the full dramatics. But you try to swing this thing, in this, it's pretty tough. It's hard to get around on that, But anyway, but every night he is, I don't want that to fall down while I'm preaching. Every night he's in there practicing his putting, on a floor, trying to hit a cup, so that as he does that, maybe he can improve his game. How about that? Come on. That's what you call, you don't even need to take another. I was going to take a mulligan, but I don't even need any more after that. So Francis keeps practicing and practicing. He gets in the U.S. Open. His dad doesn't want him to be in the U.S. Open because he doesn't care. It doesn't matter to him. U.S. Open means nothing to him. But to Francis, it meant something. It meant that he had the opportunity to use the talent and the gift that God had given him. Not everybody's gifted in the same way. The problem is we're letting people define what our gifts should be, because we feel pressure as to what we're supposed to be and look like. The Bible says in Romans chapter 12, verse 2, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. He tells us that we're not supposed to be conformed. In other words, that means don't let somebody else turn you into something that you're not. Each person has something unique from God. There's a gift that each one of us has, and then other people try to make us look like everybody else. It happens even in church. Well, you're supposed to look like this. You're supposed to do church like this, because after all, church is church. And so you need to make it look the same as any other church. And see, but the problem with that is this, that not everybody has the same call. You may be called, many people are called into ministry, but they're called in different ways with different anointings. I'm anointed to do things that somebody else is not anointed to do, and others are anointed to do things that I couldn't even but dream to do. And when I try to make myself be what somebody else is, or try to become somebody else and compare myself to them, I end up failing, and you will too. You're not supposed to look like everybody else. You're supposed to look like you. You've been created in the image of God, after the likeness of God, to be the person that God has created you to be. You're an awesome person. Each person is wonderful, just different. And so his dad is trying to enforce him to be something that he thinks he should be. We're not like those people, but yet, how do you change? How do you change a mindset of that culture? Well, you're not a gentleman, so you're not supposed to play golf. How do you change that? Does that mean it should stay that way forever? See, we have to learn that God wants us to operate within his standards. God has standards for not only our individual lives, but also for the church at large, but also, I would say this, specifically for our church as well. There's a standard of which God has given us, and we cannot allow other churches or good, well-meaning people to change the course that God has for us, or set the standards that God has set out for us. We have to learn that we have to be sold out to the thing that God has called us to. We cannot lower our standards, now having said that, to just to try to attract people without the substance of God's word. I mean, I believe in lure. Now, talking about like fishing, because we think about lures, we took a little fishing trip. I'm like some of you guys that was out on the fishing trip, Marco and Dave and Chris and Scott. I mean, and others as well. But you guys are like nuts, with your lures and everything. They got like everything. They got like the artificial stuff that is, spinning, and then they got all the worms and everything. And I don't even like baiting the worms, just to be perfectly honest with you. I know. I mean, you want me to be transparent, right? Now, I'm not even crazy about catching a fish. Now, I don't mind eating the fish after somebody's caught it. I'm not much of a catch it and eat it guy, because I don't know. But anyway, but they got all these crazy lures and, spinners and stuff, and they know which ones work better for different fish in different waters. And I'm like, you guys are nuts. You know what I was thinking? You know what I was thinking when they had all their lures? I was thinking, where's my golf club? Where's my golf club? Because while you guys are out there catching fish, I'd like to be, playing golf. It's just me. But I do appreciate what lures mean. It means it's bait. And we live in a world today, and we frankly have always lived in a world where it requires bait for people. Isn't that what Jesus said? What did he tell Peter? Did he tell Peter, I'll make you what? Now see, the context of that thought or that statement was, I'm going to show you how to catch them, because they're not easy to catch. Now sometimes it's easier than others, and these guys did catch some fish, but it's not always the easiest thing in the world. And so I believe in bait, in catching people, but not without a purpose. Let's catch them just so that we can have church. We need more people in our church. We need more money in our church. So let's catch more people. No, that's not the purpose. Now, all that comes with that, and you need all of that. But there is a purpose behind the catch. and that is to introduce them to the kingdom of God. So having the bait and the lure for a church is wonderful, and it's different in different times, and it's different for different churches, and it's different in different communities. I don't judge Kingsway Church based upon other churches and go, well, this church is, got it all figured out, and this one is terrible, and this one is. Everybody is doing what they believe is the right thing. Everybody is following after the plan of God, hopefully, as much as they know how, as much as they know what they're looking for, what they believe the Lord has told them to do. And it's why that I appreciate not being judged either. Well, I don't think that Pastor Phil ought to be showing a movie on Sunday at the movie. I mean, can you believe they're showing a clip of that movie? Just stop. Because you don't even know the purpose of what we're doing. We're not sitting here eating popcorn and having cherry Coke. There's a purpose behind what we do. There's a reason. And it's a lure. It's one of the spinners. It's a big, fat, juicy worm. Our intention is to fish for people. And that, at the end of the day, is what it's all about, is fishing for people. Amen. So we want to be attractive. But we also have certain standards of which we have to comply with. Now, the world has made standards to be certain things like, well, don't wear this. Don't, here's your standard. You got to wear a suit and tie, which this is the first time I had a tie in a long time. Now, I'm not against ties. I wore ties for a long time. Loved occasionally dressing up, But I also believe I can preach in a Kingsway Church T-shirt just as well. It's not about what you wear. It's not about even what you do. It's about what's in the heart. And so we come in, I'm interested in winning people however that be. So that's not the standard. God just has his standards, and we're not talking about do's and don'ts. That's not my purpose. That's not my thought. God has certain ways that he wants us to accomplish things, just like that we can't change our standards for somebody else, and somebody else can't change their standards for us, because after all, we need our standards set the way that God has set them so that we can win a U.S. Open. You know what I'm talking about? Not literally, but so that we can have that moment. It was the pinnacle in Francis's life to win a U.S. Open. And so there are strategies also of how to do that. My strategy on winning people is different than other people's strategy. But there is strategy. Even Jesus had strategy. Do you know that? Why didn't he get 10 apostles? Why didn't Jesus, do things different? Why didn't he come during this era? Why did he wait till, why did he come, at the time period in history that he came? Because this was all strategy. This is God's strategy. Everything that Jesus did was with a purpose. There wasn't no, by the way, since we're here moments. Everything he did was strategized. God out of the strategy of God. And if we'll listen to God, he can give us the proper strategies as well. And that's what we're trying to do. We don't want to blend in. We don't want to look like everybody else, but not for the sake of just being different, but for the sake of accomplishing something, for the sake of reaching people. And we're not called to do everything exactly the way anybody else is, nor are they called to do everything the way that we are. Now, I know sometimes we get a little bit too radical sometimes, and people go, but what about the older folks? Do we have any older folks in here? Wait, don't raise your hand. Let me look across the room here just a minute, because I have to get beyond I don't see anybody over there. I don't see anybody over here either. I don't see anybody over here either. These are all like young-looking people to me. So I might need a volunteer. The purpose in what we're doing is to reach more people. Okay? Now, with that thought, sometimes people think, well, I'm getting left behind. And that's not at all the case. That's not the purpose of it. Whether it's an older person or a younger person, our heart and our goal is always to meet the needs of wherever stage that you're in life. However, sometimes older people, and especially more older in the sense of mature in their Christianity, walk of Christianity, you need a little less care. I have a fairly new granddaughter, right? Y'all know that? Y'all been introduced to Belle? She's awesome. And we just like crazy over this kid. And so she's about 15 months old or close to it. And she needs a lot of attention. I mean, you know, you can imagine, right? She doesn't come in and say, Papa, can you fix me a steak dinner? I mean, she's not ready for that. She needs a lot of care. We have to watch her all the time. She's in our house. Somebody's following that kid because she's like touching everything. She's busy. And so we're watching her all the time. Now, if you come to my house, I don't have to follow you to the bathroom. I will follow her to the bathroom because you know what she's liable to do in the bathroom? Oh, there's some water in here. Splash, splash. Can you imagine? Now, I'm not really super concerned about you going to the bathroom and playing in the toilet bowl. I figure you know better. I figure you understand that's where you do your business. Right? Come on. Okay. So it's the same spiritually. You don't quite need as much attention as new people do. So therefore, in the grand scheme of things, you get a little bit less, but we're still here when you just have something that you need to be dealt with. And most mature people understand that. They understand that. Now, if they come in, they constantly just need something, you know, then it kind of tells where they're at. They're in that stage where we have to chase them to the toilet. Make sure they don't play in the toilet water, right? So we don't want to leave anybody behind. So here's the thing. We've discovered that we can change the method of delivery. We can change the method of delivery. We just can't change the message. The message is untouchable. It's unchangeable. Doesn't need to be changed. It's a winning message. But there are different ways to change the delivery of that. So there's a strategy to that, and there's a strategy to this church in our goal of trying to accomplish what we believe God has called us to. And if you've attached yourself to this church, then don't be bickering and griping and complaining. Attach yourself to the strategy that God has given us and help us fulfill that strategy so that we can fulfill the purpose. Now, in 2 Kings chapter 4, don't turn there. I'm just going to talk about a few things here. 2 Kings chapter 4 and 2 Kings chapter 5. There's two particular instances here I thought was interesting. 2 Kings 4 is the scripture that talks about where the lady goes and she says that her husband, she's lost her husband, and her husband owed some money, and she has two children, and she has no money, and the man of God tells her to go borrow the vessels. He said, borrow not a few. Now, King James, that's a little, you got to think about it. He essentially, obviously, was just saying, go borrow every one you can find. Get as many as you can get. So she goes and she gets as many as she can get, and each time she does, the oil just keeps filling up. Now, that seems like an odd thing to do. I mean, God is not always like, sometimes he'll tell you to do some things that will seem illogical and a little bit quirky. Go borrow vessels, and when you bring them in, they'll get filled up with oil. Isn't that bizarre? The same way he tells Naaman through the prophet, Elisha, he says, you go out and dip yourself 7 times in the Jordan River, and when you do that, your skin will come to you clean, and you'll no longer be a leper. And your mind fights you sometimes. And so we're no different. Sometimes God will tell us to do certain things, and it seems a little silly. It seems illogical. Sometimes God may tell you to take off running around the room. Now, that might seem silly to anybody else. You go, what is the value in the run? What was the value in the dipping 7 times? Let me tell you. Let me help you. It was obedience. It was to follow after what God said. If God said it, sometimes it isn't about the act. It's about the obedience. And so he was wanting Naaman to be obedient. He was wanting the lady to be obedient. And when they were obedient, he opened up the blessing. Sometimes he might tell you, take off running. He might tell you to shout, run, jump. He might tell you to testify to somebody in the midst of your problem, in the midst of your situation that you're going through, your challenges. So not everything seems logical. In fact, it might even seem silly from time to time. And sometimes people might come in here, look around and hang with me just a minute, I'm going somewhere. They might come in and say, is all this really necessary? Is that at the movies thing really necessary? I don't like the way you do the lights. I like the old church, the way that we used to do this. I don't like the new music. I don't like the new things. It's strategy. Strategy. And sometimes it don't seem the most logical. It doesn't seem like the easiest thing to do, because it'd be easy to be what everybody else is. And we're not saying that we're better. Don't misunderstand that. That's not what I mean. Sometimes it just means you got to listen to what God tells you. Amen. Not what God tells. He does everybody just a little bit different. And he tells individuals things to do just a little bit different. In fact about it, when you come into church, you represent strengths and weaknesses. Some of you, you all have strengths. You might not know it. But each and every one of you have a strength. Now, I don't know what all those are. And some of you have weaknesses. But the problem is this. Anytime our weaknesses get exposed in the church world, what we tend to find ourselves doing is we jump on those and say, look at those weaknesses. Look how terrible that is. Look at what that is. Look at how terrible this person is, rather than say, let me cover that. Let me help you with that. Let's proclaim your strengths, and I'm going to be with you to cover your weaknesses. Amen. Instead of doing that, we just point everybody else's weaknesses out, and we just say what's wrong with everybody else. That is not the way that we build up the church. Because people are watching, and they see that, and they say, well, you just are a bunch that eats their own. I don't want to eat our own. I don't want to eat anybody. Literally or figuratively. We're so much stronger when we recognize that we're in something together. But each person brings certain strengths. And if we'll dig into that and find their strengths, we can make our church be wonderful. There's things I can't do you don't want me to do. It just wouldn't be a strength. It wouldn't be what would be helpful to our church. But there are other things that I'm and I'll say this, but there are things that I am strong in. And there's some things I'm very weak in. And that's why that we want to surround ourselves with people that help cover our weaknesses, and then we cover their weaknesses. Now, let me talk just a minute about seasons. This is kind of in the place that I want to really get to. We have to realize that our life consists of seasons just the same way that the seasons are around us. What are we in right now? We're in the summer, right? And each season carries with it different things. In the winter, what happens? It gets cold, and it ain't my favorite season, but there's value to it. And then there's the spring, and there's certain things about that season, but it's different, but there's certain values to it. Then you get into the summer, and do you ever notice how fickle people are? In the wintertime, they will gripe and complain about how cold it is and how the weather's terrible. And I'm not much different, so I'm not saying you're bad and I'm not. I'm saying we're all kind of pathetic in that respect. We all complain, oh, it's too cold, it's too this, it's too that, and then the next thing you know, man, I can't wait till the summer. Then the summer gets here and you go, man, it's so hot. I can't stand this heat. I can't, this is ridiculous how hot it is. And so you're never really happy in that sense. There's winter, there's spring, there's summer, and then there's fall. And so all of these carry with it these different times. These are representations of your life. You're in different times in your life. And sometimes people don't even realize it, but they don't realize that they're in a current season, and they are thinking about being in the next season of their life. And because they're thinking about the next season of their life, the season that they're in, they don't get to do anything and can't accomplish anything. And that season passes them by, and they could have done Uh-oh. No, okay. I thought I lost me. And so there's seasons that we need to be sold out to. Whatever season that you're in, it doesn't matter whether you're in winter or whether you're in spring or whether you're in summer or whether you're in fall. You have to be sold out to that season, because that season carries with it something you can never get back again. Now, Francis was in a season of his life where he had an opportunity to play in the U.S. Open. And his dad just didn't think that was the right thing to do, because not for his kind. We work with our hands, we earn an honest day's wage, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. But Francis had a different gift that his dad didn't have. And he could have just bowed and said, I'll do whatever you want. I'll just whatever you say, that's what I'll be. And he would have lost the opportunity to have played in the U.S. Open. How many times are we listening to what everybody else tells us, and we're not listening to what the Holy Spirit is telling us? The Holy Spirit is telling us in different times, in different seasons in our lives, to make sure that we're listening so that we can follow after Him. So there's something great that He wants to achieve in our lives in that season. And some of us are looking back and we're going, oh my gosh, back in the day. How many of you ever said that? Come on now. Back in the day, that was, it was, woo, big stuff back then. Now, the connotation to that is big stuff back then, not so much today. Well, I am, 78 or 82 or 85, and, yeah, it is a different season for you. But that doesn't mean that you can't be used in that season in just a different way. The problem is you can't be sold out to be an 85 if you're thinking about 62. And if you're 62, you can't be sold out to 62 thinking about back in the day when it was 25. You have to be sold out to where you are right now, where your life is right now, because that's what you have. Yesterday is gone, and tomorrow hasn't happened yet. So what you have is right now. You have an opportunity to change somebody's life, including your own, right now, because that's what you have. So we have to be sold out to right now. Francis was sold out to being the best golfer he could be and get to play in the U.S. Open, because he didn't know if he'd ever get another opportunity. I had the opportunity, the Lord gave me the opportunity, gave me and Debbie the opportunity to start Kingsway Church 13 years ago. We had that opportunity. Now, we sold out to it. Wasn't easy, and still ain't. But it was hard. When you don't know if anybody's going to show up, because if you all had called me and told me, I'm with you, man, I'll be there, you'd have made my life a little bit easier. We didn't know who was going to show up. Anybody was ever going to show up. And then go buy are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Buy a building? And it wasn't like a ridiculous amount of money, but buy a building for $150,000 and then borrow another $100,000 to build onto the back of the building. And you go to the banker and he says, now why do you need $240,000? Well, we need it for our church. We're buying this building and we're building on the back of it. Well, that's wonderful. Well, how many people do you have in your church? We have 4. I could only even count on the 2 kids that had to do what I said to do. Just kidding. We had no idea what was going to happen. Because you can't force people. You can't manipulate people. But here's my point. We've had the privilege for 13 years of being able to pastor Kingsway Church. This is a season. This season is going to come and go. I don't know what is in store, later down the road. I don't know how long that we get to do this, or how long that the Lord directs us. I don't have any particular thought that, in the next 6 months we're going somewhere. But there will come a time when your season changes. And if you're always looking back going, man, I wish I had that in the future, boy, look back in the heyday when we was doing that, then that means you can't be sold out to right now. We need to be sold out right now to what God is doing in our lives right now. And really, it's the same thing. I'm going to make this statement. If you sold out in smaller things, which is just another way of saying being faithful, if you're faithful to smaller things, then God will reward you with bigger things. It all starts out with just being sold out to whatever it is that God tells you to do. Small, medium, or large. Doesn't matter. Because you don't get the credit anyway. Right. And if you're interested in the credit, then you got the wrong motivation anyway. So it's not really about you. It's just about fulfilling the plan and the purpose that God told you to do. But just for your information, when you do it that way, God rewards. You may never get another chance to be sold out to the season that you're in right now. You may never get another chance, and you may be looking back and have regrets that, man, I could have, would have, should have. So what you have right now is right now. You have today, and you have the opportunity to be sold out. You also have the opportunity to be sold out to sacrificing. You say, oh man, you could have went the whole sermon without ever talking about sacrificing. Why you want to talk about sacrifice? Because sacrifice means that it's painful. Y'all ever sacrifice something for your kids? It's like, man, they cost me money. My kids have cost me a small fortune. I'm just going to tell you right now. But I love them. And it was worth the sacrifice. They were worth the sacrifice. You can sacrifice all kinds of things. You get to sacrifice your time. When you come into the body of Christ, you have an opportunity to sacrifice your time. You go, well, I would rather be doing something else. I'd rather be going to the movies. And I'm not against the movies. Don't misunderstand me. There is time for that. But, you know, you say, well, I'm too busy because I can't offer any sacrifice because I'm just too busy. Then you're too busy. Because you're not willing to give a sacrifice. You know that this is the only life right now, however long your life is. The Bible says you can live up to 120 in Genesis chapter 6, verse 3. But let's just say it's 100 years. 100 years. In 100 years, you get the opportunity to sacrifice. And after that, you get no more opportunities to sacrifice. There's no more sacrificing in heaven. You don't get to sacrifice your time. You don't get to sacrifice your money. Because, you know, money is always such a touchy subject with people. It's like, oh, don't ask me to give up my money. Well, it's a sacrifice. It is a sacrifice to give your money up to be a part of this. Now, I'm not saying we got a club and we send you membership dues. We don't do that, right? It's all voluntary. You either do or you don't. But it is a sacrifice. That's what makes it a sacrifice. But a sacrifice shows what you deem as valuable. If you sacrifice your time to something, it means you recognize that thing you sacrificed to was worth your time. If you sacrifice your money, you say it was worth the money. If you sacrifice your praise when you don't feel like praising, y'all ever just come into church and you just like, man, I don't feel like doing nothing. Is it just me? You know, sometimes I'm telling you, I heard Jesse Duplantis say this one time, and I thought, man, I'm going to use that because that's how I feel. Jesse said sometimes, he said, he feels like he's got a big itinerary and knows he's got to be at church. And he said, sometimes I just feel like saying, just tell him to play a DVD because I just don't feel like it. And sometimes I feel like just saying, can you just play that message last week again? Pick out one of those really good ones from the past. Pick that and play that because I'm just not in the mood. But it's a sacrifice. You come in, you go, no, I'm committed. And once you get here, the Holy Ghost gets on you. Spirit of God begins to move, and you just, and then you know, man, it was worth it. It was a sacrifice. When you don't feel like praising, when everything else around you is falling apart, and your life is just in disarray, and you come in and you say, I'm going to offer up praise anyway. You don't feel like praising God, but you still do it. What is that? It's the sacrifice of praise, and you only get to do it in this life. It is listen to me now. It is a privilege to sacrifice. I know it don't feel like it. I know it's hard. Nobody said it was easy. If it's easy, then honestly, it's not enough. There are times that you need to feel some pain. So whatever we do, we don't get to do it in heaven. You're not going to get to do all this stuff right now. Now, Francis, we met. We're getting ready to show you another video here in just a minute. And Francis had to sacrifice, potentially hearing his father say, you do that, you don't quit right now, you find you somewhere else to live. He had to sacrifice time to practice that he could have been earning money. He could have been doing all kinds of things. But there was one thing that he had a God-given gift and a talent to do, and that was to play golf. Now watch. We think sometimes, well, what in the world, why would that be something? Do you know that he's still in the history books today? 1913, an amateur, the first amateur to win the U.S. Open. And watch this, and I'm preaching about him. You think that he thought when his dad was telling him, you stop or you find another place to live, and he's making that sacrifice, do you think he was thinking, you know what? I bet Pastor Phil will preach about me in 2018. Do you think he was thinking that? I doubt it, being that he died in 1967. And I was barely in existence at that time. So to my knowledge, we didn't meet. But what he did gave me an opportunity to show to you that if we will be sold out to the plans that God puts inside of us, if you'll get sold out to the vision that God shows you, it's different. It don't have to be the same thing as everybody else. Quit trying to be like everybody else. Be you. And let God use you. But look, now let me say one last thing before we show you this last clip. But make sure you are following after His plan, not yours. There's where the sacrifice comes in. Because you have a certain mindset and a certain idea as to how things ought to be and the way that the way they should look. You need to sell out to what God says for you. Sell out to His plan. Sell out to His strategy, and let Him use you just like a chess piece. Let God be the one that's moving you across the board, and you say, here I am, send me. Use me in the capacity of which that you know is best for me. So, just make sure that you open yourself up to that and let the Spirit of God give you that direction, guys.